Okay, so you want to own a casino. The math is famously on your side. Every game on that floor is built, so the house wins a little more than it loses, forever. And all you have to do is open the doors and let the money grind in. Here's the strange part. On the biggest casino properties on Earth, the gambling floor isn't where most of the money comes from. The tables and the slots can be a minority of the revenue, and a casino owner will happily hand you a free room, free drinks, and a free steak to get you into a building where the actual profit is the hotel, the restaurants, and the convention hall. The house edge isn't the business. It's the bait. But before we get anywhere near the money, we have to talk about the thing that stops almost everyone. And it isn't the cost of the building. It's a piece of paper. You cannot simply decide to run a casino. In every serious jurisdiction on Earth, gambling is licensed, and the licensing process is one of the most invasive in all of business. Regulators will examine where every dollar of your money came from. They will investigate your background, your partners, your investors, and sometimes your family. They will want to know your character, your associations, and your history, in a level of detail that would be considered outrageous in almost any other industry. The process can take years and cost an enormous amount before you are allowed to place a single chair on a single floor. And here's why they do it. A casino is a business that moves gigantic amounts of cash, quickly, anonymously, in a way that is extraordinarily attractive to people who want to hide where money came from. So the state's price for letting you run one is total transparency about who you are, which means the barrier to entry here is not primarily financial. It's a barrier of permission. Now understand what that permission is actually worth. In a market where the government issues only a limited number of licenses, that license isn't paperwork. It's a moat. It means that no matter how much money a competitor has, they cannot simply appear next door and undercut you. The number of people legally allowed to do what you do is capped by law. That scarcity is a large part of why casino properties trade for the sums they do, and it's why an existing licensed casino, even a mediocre one, can be worth far more than the sum of its slot machines and carpet. You aren't just buying a building. You're buying the right to operate one, in a world where that right is deliberately rationed. All right, say you've cleared that hurdle. Now you build. And the number here is genuinely difficult to hold in your head. A serious resort casino is not a gambling hall. It's a small city. Thousands of hotel rooms, multiple restaurants, theaters, retail arcades, pools, convention space measured in acres, parking for tens of thousands of cars, backup power, industrial laundry, kitchens sized for a stadium, and a surveillance system that would make a government envious. The largest integrated resorts have cost in the billions of dollars to construct. Not millions. Billions, with a B, for a single property. And on top of that, before you open, you need cash. Real cash, sitting in the cage doing nothing. Because you have to be able to pay out on any night, including a night that goes badly, including a night where someone hits an enormous jackpot or a high roller wins repeatedly. A casino that cannot pay a winner is a casino that is finished instantly and permanently, because the entire product you're selling is the credibility of the payout. So a chunk of your capital simply sits there, unproductive, as proof that you can lose. And then there's the cost of simply staying open, which is where a lot of first-time owners get quietly destroyed. A resort casino is one of the most labor-heavy businesses in existence. Dealers, and enough of them to run every table and shifts around the clock. Cocktail servers, housekeeping for thousands of rooms, kitchen brigades, security, surveillance operators watching hundreds of cameras, cage staff counting cash, compliance officers, whose entire job is to keep you from losing your license, hosts whose job is to know your best customers personally. A single large property can employ thousands of people, and every one of them gets paid whether the floor is busy or empty. And the building itself never sleeps. The lights stay on, the air conditioning runs, the cameras record, the doors stay open at 3 in the morning on a dead Tuesday, exactly as they do on a packed Saturday, which means your cost base is enormous and almost entirely fixed, while your revenue depends on how many people happen to be standing in your building at any given moment. That asymmetry is the shape of the whole business, and it is why an empty casino bleeds so violently. It costs nearly the same to run a full one. Which brings us to the machine everybody thinks they understand. The house edge. Here's the actual mechanism, and it's more interesting than the folk version. Every game on the floor is built so that the amount the casino expects to pay out is slightly less than the amount it expects to take in. In some games, that gap is enormous. In others, it's shockingly small, well under 1%. And people love to point at those thin edge games and say the casino is barely winning. But that misunderstands the entire structure, because the edge was never meant to work on one hand. It's meant to work on 10 million of them. This is the law of large numbers, and it is the closest thing this business has to a religion. Over a single bet, anything can happen. Over a single night, anything can happen. But as the number of bets grows, results stop wandering and start collapsing toward the expected value with a reliability that is genuinely eerie, which means a casino's actual product is not luck. It's volume. The house isn't trying to beat you tonight. The house is trying to run enough hands, spins, and rolls that mathematics stops being a probability and starts being a schedule. And there's a second, sneakier reason volume matters so much, which is that the casino doesn't just win the edge once. It wins it repeatedly on the same money. Picture a player who sits down and buys in for $1,000. She bets, she wins some, she loses some, and she bets her winnings again. Her $1,000 might get wagered 5, 10, 20 times over before it's gone. And the house edge applies to every one of those wagers, not to her original 1,000. This is why casinos talk about two different numbers. There's the money that walks in, and then there's the far smaller amount that actually stays behind. The gap between them is the whole game, and it widens with every additional bet you can persuade her to make. She doesn't have to lose every hand. She just has to keep playing, because every time that same money crosses the felt again, the machine takes another small bite out of it. Which is also why the slot machine, which looks like the dumbest thing on the floor, is often the most profitable. A slot doesn't need a dealer. It never takes a break. And it can run a wager every few seconds, all day, for years. A busy table might see a few dozen hands an hour. A slot bank can process a staggering number of individual bets in that same hour. Each one a tiny opportunity for the mathematics to do its work. The elegance of the slot floor isn't the graphics or the jackpots. It's the sheer number of times per minute it lets the edge apply itself. And now watch how everything else in the building suddenly makes sense. If your profit is a small percentage applied to an enormous number of bets, then the single most valuable thing in the world to you is not a bigger edge. It's more bets, more wagers per hour, more hours per visitor, more visitors per year. Every design decision on that floor is engineered around one goal, which is to increase the total number of times money crosses the table. That's why the floor is designed to be easy to enter and confusing to leave. That's why the drinks are free and keep arriving. That's why chips exist instead of cash, because it hurts less to push a plastic disc across felt than to hand over a bill. That's why slot machines celebrate a payout that is actually less than what you put in, because the sound of winning keeps you spinning. None of this is decoration. It's throughput engineering. You are not being entertained. You are being kept at the table, because time at the table is literally the raw material the business consumes. So that's the first layer of the machine. The edge multiplied by volume. Now, let's look at the layers most people never count. The second layer is the resort itself, and it's the one that reframes the whole industry. On the biggest properties, the hotel rooms, the restaurants, the bars, the shows, the shops, and above all, the convention and conference business can add up to as much as or more than the gambling floor produces. Think about a hotel with several thousand rooms. Think about a convention hall hosting an enormous trade show, where a corporation books thousands of room nights, meeting space, catering, and banquets, all at once, all at full price, with none of the variance of a gambling floor. Read that again, because it's genuinely strange. The most reliable money in a casino resort can come from the least glamorous part of it. Conventions don't get lucky. Conventions don't go on a heater and take $1 million off you. A conference organizer books a block of rooms months in advance and pays what they said they'd pay. That's not gambling revenue. That's the world's most boring, most predictable hospitality contract, and it's a large part of why the modern casino resort exists in the form it does. Which means the mental model most people carry is backwards. They picture a hotel attached to a casino. In reality, on many properties, it's closer to a resort with a casino attached, and the casino floor is the thing that makes the resort famous enough and busy enough to fill. But now a warning, because this is where people copy the wrong business. Not every casino works this way, and if you build the wrong kind in the wrong place, you will fail spectacularly. The giant destination resort, the one where conventions and hotels and shows carry the revenue, only works if people are willing to travel to it and stay for days. That requires a destination, a critical mass of other attractions, an airport, and a reason to be there beyond the gambling itself. The other kind of casino, the regional one, works on completely different physics. It serves people who live nearby and drive in for a few hours. They don't book rooms. They don't attend conventions. They don't see shows. They come to gamble and then they go home. And for that property, the gambling floor genuinely is the business, because there's nothing else. Which means it lives or dies on the raw math of the floor, with no reliable hotel revenue to cushion a bad stretch. And it is far more exposed the moment a competitor opens a slightly closer casino between it and its customers. Same industry, same games, completely different animal. And confusing the two, building a destination resort in a market that only has local drive-in demand, is one of the most expensive mistakes anyone has ever made in this business. The third layer is the food, drink, entertainment, and retail, and here you have to understand something counterintuitive about pricing. Some of it is priced to make money. Some of it is deliberately priced to lose money or given away entirely. The cheap buffet, the discounted room, the free show ticket, the drinks that never stop. To an outsider, that looks like generosity, or at best a loss leader. It's neither. It's an investment with a calculated return. And that brings us to the fourth layer, which is the real hidden machine of the modern casino. The loyalty program. That little card the casino wants you to insert into the slot machine or hand to the dealer at the table is not a discount club. It is a surveillance and valuation system, and it is arguably the most valuable asset the company owns after the license itself. Because when you use that card, the casino is measuring you. Not your winnings and not your losses, but something much more useful. It's measuring how much you bet, for how long, on which games, at what speed. From that, it can calculate what the industry calls your theoretical loss. That is, given the edge on the games you play, and given how much and how fast you play them, how much the mathematics says you should lose to this building over time. And here's the beautiful, slightly chilling part. That theoretical number, not your actual results, is what determines how the casino treats you. A person who plays big and long can be a hugely valuable customer, even if they happen to win this trip. Because the math says the trips will average out. So the casino calculates what you are worth to it over time and then reinvests a fraction of that expected value back into you in the form of comps. The free room, the upgraded suite, the dinner, the show tickets, the flight, the host who knows your name and calls you when a fight is in town. That's what a comp is. It is not a gift and it is not gratitude. It is a marketing expense, sized precisely against your expected losses, designed to make sure that the next time you feel like gambling, you come back here instead of going anywhere else. The whole apparatus of hospitality, which looks like the casino being nice to you, is a customer retention program funded by the mathematics of the floor. And once you see it that way, a strange piece of arithmetic falls out of it. Every casino has, somewhere in its systems, a reinvestment rate. That's the share of your theoretical loss it's willing to hand back to you in comps in order to keep you. And that number is a genuine strategic weapon. Give back too little, and your best customers drift to the property across the street that treats them better. Give back too much, and you've handed away the very margin the mathematics was so patiently generating. So the casino is, in effect, constantly running an auction for your loyalty against every rival in town. And the loyalty program is how it knows exactly how high it can afford to bid on you specifically. Two people can walk into the same building on the same night. One gets a free buffet coupon. The other gets a suite, a car to the airport, and a call from a host on his birthday. Neither of them is being rewarded. Both of them are being priced. And it goes further up the ladder than free buffets. At the top end are the whales, players who wager enormous sums, and for them, The casino will fly them in, house them in a private villa, extend them millions of dollars in credit, and treat them like visiting royalty. Because the theoretical value of their play is so large that all of that lavishness is a rounding error against what the math says they'll leave behind. So step back and look at what you actually own. The floor generates a reliable mathematical yield, but only if people are on it for a long time, repeatedly. The resort makes the property somewhere people want to be, and quietly earns enormous reliable revenue of its own. And the loyalty system measures every single person, decides exactly what they're worth, and spends precisely enough on them to keep them coming back. The three things are not separate businesses. They're one machine, and the machine's actual product is engineered time. You are in the business of getting human beings to stay in your building and then to return to it for as many hours as possible, for as many years as possible. And now, the trapdoor. Because this business, for all its mathematical certainty, has failure modes that are genuinely brutal. Here's the first one, and it's the direct cost of the thing that makes the whole model work. The edge is only reliable at scale, which means over any short window, the casino is exposed to real, ugly variance. A single high roller on a hot streak can take an enormous amount of money out of the building, and unlike the small player, whose losses are statistically inevitable, the whale is a genuine gamble for the house. There have been quarters where major casino companies have publicly reported worse results, because a small number of extremely large players simply won. The math will get it back eventually. But eventually is not the same as this quarter. And if you are carrying debt on a multi-billion-dollar building, the gap between eventually and this quarter is exactly where companies die, which leads to the second failure mode, and it's the one outsiders never see coming. Casino credit. High-end players often don't play with cash. They play on a marker, which is essentially a short-term loan the casino extends so they can gamble now and settle later. This is a normal and necessary part of the high-end business, and it means the casino's revenue includes a large pile of money that has not actually arrived yet. Now imagine the player loses $10 million on credit, goes home to a jurisdiction where that debt is difficult or impossible to enforce, and simply doesn't pay. You booked the win. You never collect the money. The house edge worked perfectly, and you still got nothing. The math can be right, and the cash can still never show up. And the third failure mode is the biggest, and it's the reason casino executives are more careful than almost any other industry. The license. Remember, everything you own rests on permission, and permission can be taken away. A serious compliance failure, a money laundering scandal, an association with the wrong people, a violation of the rules you promised to follow, and a regulator can suspend or revoke the very thing your business is built on. And when that happens, you do not lose a percentage of revenue. You lose all of it, instantly, in a building that still costs a fortune to run. Not one bet has to go wrong. Not one card. The mathematics can be perfect and the doors still close, because the thing that was really holding this business up was never the odds. It was permission. That's the trapdoor. A casino can be mathematically guaranteed to win and still be destroyed. And the three ways it dies: bad luck at scale, uncollectible credit, and a lost license have almost nothing to do with whether the games were profitable. So let's answer the question we started with. What do you actually own when you own a casino? Not the games. The games are just a mechanism, and a well-known one. Everybody knows the house wins. There's no secret there, and there's no advantage in it either, because your competitor's roulette wheel is exactly as favorable as yours. What you actually own is a rationed permission slip to operate a machine that converts human time into money at a fixed, mathematically guaranteed rate, and a building engineered from the carpet up to feed that machine as many human hours as it can physically hold. The house edge is the easy part. Anybody can have the edge. The hard part, the part you spend billions on, is filling the room, keeping people in it, and making them come back. Which is why the free drink, the missing clock, the loyalty card, the cheap buffet, the convention hall, and the private jet for the whale are all the same thing wearing different clothes. They are all mechanisms for buying time on the property. The edge doesn't make money. The edge converts time into money, and your entire real business is the acquisition of that time. So, should you buy one? Here's the honest split. The optimistic version goes like this. You hold a license in a market where licenses are scarce and demand is deep. Your property is large enough that the resort side, the rooms, the conventions, the restaurants carries reliable revenue regardless of what happens on the floor. Your loyalty system knows exactly what every customer is worth and spends exactly enough to keep them. The edge grinds away underneath everything, hour after hour, converting the time you've so carefully purchased into a return that is, at sufficient volume, about as predictable as anything in business gets. Done at scale, in the right jurisdiction, it is one of the most reliable money-producing machines human beings have ever legally constructed. The harder version looks like this. You've borrowed heavily to build a very expensive building in a market with more competition than it can support. Your floor is quiet, so your throughput is low, so the mathematics never gets the volume it needs to become reliable. A few big players take a run at you and win, and the quarter is wrecked. Some of your credit doesn't come back. The debt payment arrives anyway, every month, on a building that cost a fortune. And somewhere in a government office, a regulator is reading a report about your compliance department. And the entire foundation of the business, the permission, is a signature away from disappearing. And notice what decides between those two futures. Almost none of it is the gambling. The odds were always in your favor. In both versions, on every table, on every single spin. The odds were never the problem. Because in the end, a casino doesn't make money from gambling. It makes money from time, and the gambling is just the meter that's running while you stay. The house doesn't need luck, and it never did. It only needs you to stay a little longer.